and now to introduce our instructors for today. Okay, we have Brita Drury, project manager here at NovaRad. Brita is a licensed radiologic technologist and holds an MBA in product management and marketing, organization effectiveness and ethics concentrated in healthcare from SUNY Empire State University in New York. Brita has been a radiology director and healthcare consultant. She takes a patient-centric approach to improving outcomes and cost-efficient healthcare by connecting clinical, technological, and business across healthcare sectors. And then next we have Tony Moreno, clinical applications trainer here at NovaRad. Tony has been with NovaRad for 17 years. Previously, he has worked on the floor as an X-ray tech for 12 years and trained as a radiology specialist in the U.S. Army. All right, and again, I will put this email in the chat. Any questions not answered will be answered over email, and any questions you have that may come up later, you can send us them here at that email. And now I will turn the time over to Brita.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, it looks like, yeah, everybody's good.
Okay, excellent. All right, so thank you for attending today's class. Today, Tony and I are going to cover 3 areas: viewing mammography, AI in NovaPACS, advanced breast imaging, NovaMG Pro training. Let's look at mammography AI on the work list and AI in the images. Radiologists must balance heavy workloads and time required to accurately read extensive amounts of images. That's where AI comes in. NovaRad has invested resources to meet this challenge with both work list AI and image AI. There are added study AI scores that reflect the level of suspiciousness of the exam, as you can see. So you can prioritize the studies on the work list. Work list exam score prioritizes studies and work lists so the radiologists can quickly identify which cases need immediate attention. Your facility could have like a high score protocol. When everyone sees a score of 8 to 10 that is listed on the study browser, 10 being the most suspicious, without any phone calls or post-it notes, everyone knows the patient is to be worked up, reducing callbacks. Your patients will definitely appreciate that. So here we added some filters. A lot of you already have CAD, and now this is CAD AI. You can still continue to use your CAD as you typically do, but now a lot of vendors are incorporating CAD AI, which is different from CAD because it learns over time, unlike CAD, standard CAD. So these filters, they give you the ability to prioritize case studies by score. So a work list can be created to filter all 10s. So 10 for Transpara is the highest level of suspicion. Closer to 100 for ICAD, that's the highest for suspicion. I'll get more into that. And another for CAD AI, ICAD, with a score of 100. These are filters for density and risk. So ICAD has profound AI and for digital breast toma, and it's designed to concurrent read or to be used as a second set of eyes. And also cancer detection, it aids in that to quickly analyze each tomosynthesis image and to detect both malignant soft tissue densities and calcifications with accuracy. This AI is clinically proven to improve radiologist sensitivity by 8% and reduce the rate of false positives. and any unnecessary callbacks by 7%. So you can deliver a higher level of patient care when you can see that, flag that high score, work that patient up. Everyone knows that without the radiologist even looking at the study, that patient needs to be worked up. For radiologists, the advantage is reading time is slashed by 52.7%. So all I'm doing is hovering over with my mouse, and the certainty of finding is 24. This is the 2D image. And now I'm looking at the 3D image, and here's the certainty of finding. So if you're looking in a stack, let's say there are 54 slices in this particular one, and as the radiologist scrolls through, you can see the slice where it has the region of interest the most. That will highlight, the outer edges will highlight a lot brighter and bolder. And then here we can see this on the CC and the 3D. Let's take a look at that. So this saves them time. This is the second set of eyes that tells them this is the region of interest that you need to look at. So you can put up here on the toolbar, mark outline, CAD on, CAD off. You still have all of your favorite tools that you can use. Let's look at the report. So the results include short-term breast cancer risk categorized as low, general, moderate, and high. Our report gives a K-score of 1 to 100, as you have seen on the work list. Breast density is categorized with the appropriate BI-RADS 5th edition density category. In this case, it's category C, heterogeneously dense, with a risk factor of moderate at 59%. This comprehensive report, it provides insights for the radiologist. Even before they open the study, they have access to this. But these insights can be gained to tailor a woman's breast cancer screening regimen and potentially identify cancers earlier when they be more easily treated. Let's take a look at another vendor. Here we have Transpara. They use a score of 10. We also have integration with them. So if you use them now, we do have that integration. They are FDA cleared for both 2D and 3D. Transpara AI uses a scoring method of 1 to 10, and again, 10 being the most suspicious. So we can see the yellow triangle. I'm just going to hover. It has the number of calcifications, and the certainty of finding is 38. What does that look like on the 3D? So here we see the yellow triangle coming into focus. And then when we get to the region of interest or the slice, it will highlight bold. So this is the 31st slice. This saves the radiologist a lot of time. And then we can see on the 3D the same thing. Scroll through that. You can see all of the calcifications, and it highlights nice and bold. The certainty of finding is 87%. And in this view, we see 15 calcifications. And here we are on the 2D. These are called region scores on the image, and it's the primary region of interest. Studies have shown that AI increases accuracy up to 28%. Also, up to 35% of exams with interval cancers were found earlier. And to reduce the number of false positives, we can now reduce, it looks like the studies have shown that they ran up to 70% of exams can confidently be labeled as normal. Calcifications that were biopsied with Transparis score of 9 or below were mostly benign and have shown 23% of the benign biopsies of calcifications could have been avoided, reducing the rate of false positives. So this is a really key to and helpful. It's a great tool to reduce the rates of false positives. So we're currently working on slice navigation or jump slice. So when you double click on the 2D image, it will immediately take the radiologist to the slice of where the finding was. So if it was on slice 31, it would immediately take them to slice 31 without having to scroll through 62 slices. And then another feature is temporal comparison, and it compares the current study to the prior, and it will produce a report in the difference of findings. So let's look at their report. Here's the report that the radiologist can view prior to reading the study. In the highest, I'm going to show you something else. So here's all of the regions of interest, and they can, even before they read, it kind of gives them a heads up. These are the areas that you really want to look at, which is nice. And it lets them know exactly where they're at. So let's look at the big picture. If the highest region score on the image is 61, there could be several, or higher, that exam will be placed in a 10, elevated risk category. Approximately 1 in 20 exams that are labeled as 10 that contain cancer. So 1 in 10 in this risk category contains some type of cancer. We also expect the number of 10 exams to be no more than 10% of your screening population. Having a high score advanced work list prioritizes the radiologist's work list and brings attention to the most critical cases versus reading next in, next read. If the highest region score in the exam is between 43 and 60, that exam will fall into the 8-9 risk category. So lowest exams encompass about 20% of the screening volume, and that's 1 in 500 exams containing cancer. Finally, the highest finding on that image that has a region score of 42, that's what we find on the image. The exam will be labeled between 1 to 7, which is very low risk category. Markings associated with these scores of 42 and lower are not displayed as they are not considered to be actionable. The majority of your exams, typically up to 70% of them, can be expected to appear in this very low risk category. Because the frequency of cancer in this category drops all the way to 1 in 4,000, these mammographies can be read confidently and quickly with time spent focused on the 10s, the 9s, and the 8s. So in summary, your mammograms are analyzed with CAD AI prior to them being read, and the region scores are assigned to abnormalities identified. The highest region score, again, there could be multiple on that image, will drive the placement of the overall exam into the overall risk category. And that's that score you will see on the work list. That information is provided to use during the interpretation. So this concludes this section on mammography CAD AI and NovaMG Pro. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Hey, Brita. Has,
Yeah.
So I know how a CAD is produced. A lot of times they route the images to, either the CAD software or CAD workstation, and then a structured report is sent to us. How is this generated? Is it a service on our server, or is it routed externally and then the structured report is returned to us? How's that workflow?
Yeah, so the structured report will be routed, and it after the study has been performed, and then it will come over with the exam. So it has to come over with the images. It's not like anybody is waiting for it. And that's the whole purpose, is it for it to be ready for the radiologist. Any other questions?
Is this the same CPT as a mammo with CAD? Just out of curiosity. I mean, I guess I could have asked you previously, but I didn't.
The same, what is that?
Is it the same CPT as a mammo with CAD? This CAD AI, is it the same?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure with the insurance. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, let's look at some advanced imaging.
Oh, there is
Switch.
another. Somebody did ask a question.
Okay.
Michelle here in chat says, will this AI work with breast and
I'm sorry, Erica, I couldn't hear you.
oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. Michelle Dearmore in chat asked, will this AI work with breast MRI?
Not yet. Not yet. Right now, the vendors are focused on mammography AI, but they're getting there, I will tell you that.
Okay. And then next question, can you hide the AI CAD flags, diamonds, question mark?
Yes, that was with CAD on, CAD off. Same behavior, absolutely. And you can do that anywhere during the workflow. Any other questions?
Oh, one more. Like, what about individual CAD, or is it all or nothing?
So it will show it will mark up everything that requires CAD. All suspicious lesions will be marked up. However, you can view one at a time. And what it does is it will take the highest score of the region score, and that's what it will base it on. But the idea is to categorize the entire breast and to mark all suspicious findings. So this way, they can be monitored and tracked through the years.
Okay, another question. Will this eventually replace CAD?
It may. I think that the radiologists are really appreciating it because standard CAD, it did not learn over time. Whereas AI, it keeps learning. For if there is a rare breast cancer or if there is a earlier stage cancer, or for like those stubborn types of casting microcalcifications that are pretty fatal quickly, but they're hard to distinguish. In all of those scenarios, they want that CAD to learn it and recognize it over time. This way, it will detect more and earlier, but yet it reduces the rates of callbacks because it also has memory of that, reducing the rates of false positives. So it's pretty much a win-win. When I show different radiologists this, they really do prefer the CAD AI. These are great questions. Any others?
Looks like that's it for now, but I will keep an eye on chat. And then at your next question break, I will let you know what questions are there.
Excellent. Thanks, Erica. So let's look at advanced imaging to detect, further assess, and monitor breast cancer with NPR, acceleration imaging, ROI over time, and image fusion to gain SUVs. All of these advanced features are currently in your packs, come at no cost, and can be used remotely. So that means that radiologists, they're not tied to a workstation, and they can read these post-processed breast MRA studies at home, which I'm going to show you right now. So here I launched the mammography, and the beauty of it is it now working in one central viewer. It will launch the mammo viewer. Just imagine that this is two viewers, right, or two monitors, right? This is the one on the left, the right, and now we have it automatically launched my MRI and my breast ultrasound. So we can do an auto launch of this if we'd like. And also the ultrasound in color. You can have that launch on the other monitor. But I'm going to close this out, and here's my warning. Let me close these out. Let's look at MRI. Now, if an MRI was done and the technologists, they ran an MRA, a lot of radiologists are under the impression that they have to look at it on that workstation that did the post-processing. But in fact, they can actually have the MRA done post-processed and then read this remotely if they like. So if your radiologists are involved in remote reading or service level agreements for contracted reading, they have access. They don't have to be at that workstation. They can look at all of this processing at home or just in general for remote reading. And also they can see the decay rates, which helps, with cancer and to look at the washout rates. So let's look at a T1 pulse sequence. And if I'm looking at this along with the MRI and I'd say, gee, I wish I had this in like an oblique angle to see this a little bit better. Well, here's my 3D NPR icon. And I just clicked on it. It's right there in the toolbar. Make this a little bit larger. And I want to create an oblique view. So now I just grab this side and it will show, you can see it's actually changing the obliquity. So now the patient does not have to return for a different view, and especially when it involves contrast. So that's another advantage. I highly encourage you to let the radiologist know, hey, you can look at NPR in breast MRI. So that's one advanced tool. Now let's look at acceleration imaging to better identify breast cancers. So to go to that study. So for acceleration imaging, I work with a dynamic axial. Here I am, here's the dynamic axial, and what it does in MRI is it takes images, they inject the patient with the contrast media, gadolinium, and then it takes images, the same set of images over and over again. And it watches, we want to look at the washout rate of that contrast media. So now let's look at the acceleration rate. So NovaRad takes the pixels that are rapidly enhancing from the contrast, and we color code them so we can easily see them. So here's advanced analysis. And you can just add that to the toolbar or the right-click menu. Compute the maximum slope for each slice location over time. Okay. And now you can see the radiologist can study the enhancement over time. So just a little background to why this is so significant, because malignant tumors and they're hypermetabolic and they have large blood supplies. Tumors also have capillary supply, and they enhance with contrast rapidly and they wash out rapidly. How fast it enhances, that's the dynamic enhancement, and how much it enhances, the routine analysis. With the acceleration imaging tool, dynamic enhancement or the slope of enhancement, we'll look at multi-slice, multi-phase subtraction and the rate of enhancement. So you can see there's a big difference in how that looks. This isn't too much work for the radiologist at all. I just added that to the toolbar and one other selection, and that's it. They have it. So let's see, what else can we do with these dynamic images? Let's look at region over time. So let me go to that dynamic image that's set again. And again, this is multiple slices, and I'd like to see what the dynamic images look like over time, plotting the Hounsfield units over time. That will show an area of concern and how it also changes over time. So if I start with the first slice, the first set of images, and I select ROI over time, it will give the average, the maximum, and the median. That's what they look at. Let's go to the next batch of slices. So this helps them assess these dynamic images. And now I'm going to select ROI over time. So you can see it gives me a nice graph. The malignant lesions and benign lesions, they have different enhancement signatures. On this graph, ROI over time, it lets the radiologist compare enhancement patterns between the lesions. Now, if there was another lesion, I could also do the same thing. And then lastly, we have SUV values. So if the patient had a PET CT, and the radiologist, what they do is they look at they'd like to capture the standard uptake values, and that predicts breast cancer aggressiveness and response to treatment. And also they can capture that if it gets malignant. So I would go to the CT, and I can look through all areas, make sure there's no malignancy. I can run the SUV values off of the breast, or if, let's say, there is a malignancy and I want to take a look at that. So what I would do is I'd go to Image Fusion, and again, you can assign a hotkey, add it to your right-click menu, whatever the radiologist prefers. And then my fusing box will appear. I want to look at the CT attenuated images. There's 311, and I'm going to match the CT with the PET that also has 311 images. And I'm going to let that fuse. So now on the bottom, we can see is the fused PET CT. I can scroll through in any view. And then if I see a suspicious finding, I right click, and then I go to annotation, sphere volume. Right click and drag. And now my SUV values come up, and they will appear in all three planes. On the axial, the coronal, and the sagittal. Now you can see it has the minimum Hounsfield, the average, the maximum. So the radiologist, they can really glean a lot of information from this. Let's say if the patient had radiation therapy and they want to look for any signs of malignancy, they can look to see for malignancy, but they can also see how active it is, or how predictive that cancer is. So that concludes this section. We went through 4 breast imaging tools that can be accessed in PACS that you already have today. And I can go through any of this with anyone if you have any questions on how to get going in using these excellent tools at your facility. I highly encourage you to show the radiologist, and I would set it up so it's very conducive to use. Maybe put it on their toolbar. And a lot of times when I work with the radiologist, they don't know everything that's in our PACS. And then also they don't know how quick and easy it is to use. Now you can save this as a screen capture. And then this is what I did for something else. And then they don't have to do that. They don't have to fuse the images. You just send this over to the radiologist also. So is there any questions on the breast imaging advanced tools?
I'll give everybody just a couple moments to type any questions they may have in the chat. So just hang on one moment.
Okay, sure. While they're thinking about that, when I do work with radiologists, I will say that a lot of these tools are well received. And once I go through them, they're shocked to learn. There was one radiologist who was actually going back to the office to look at the MRA of the breast, the post-process. He thought because those images were on that workstation where they were processed, that our PACS would not be able to view them. But the NovaRad PACS, we're definitely able to view all the MRA. And then it was a huge difference for him because then he could read them when he went home. He didn't have to go in. It just expanded on his remote reading. Everything that I've showed you is can be used remotely. You're not tied to a workstation. And it's great for contracted reading.
Okay, and it looks like we do have one question. Let's see, does this mean the RAD does not need CAD for breast MRI?
Well, CAD does, apart from these different tools, they kind of, where one leaves off, the other one picks up. Like one will show flow rate, washout rate, a different angle, and then CAD and MRI, that will let them know what the score is. So again, you can prioritize your work list and kind of like a second set of eyes. Okay, this is what the CAD MRI, these are the areas that I should be focusing on. So each one of these tools that I showed, they deliver something different.
Okay, so we do have another one. Let's see. Okay, so she came in late, but she is asking, is the CAD an add-on extension?
Is the CAD an add-on extension? So the CAD we do not provide. We interface with. As you know, there are companies that they will tag it and add CAD to it or CAD AI. As far as Transpara, I'd have to see where they're at. That's a good question. Where they're at with CAD AI in MRI. Keep in mind, a lot of this CAD AI, it takes a while for the FDA to approve. You know, they have the technology, but now they need it to be FDA approved, and they have their clinical trials. I gave you a lot of different statistics that was heavily researched, and that went through the FDA. So a lot of this technology they just need clearance through the FDA. But I'll get you a definitive answer as to CAD AI in MRI, to what extent and when. Okay, I just heard back from Transpara. We have AI for MRI, but it's in development. So the good news is yeah, they're going to have it.
Okay, looks like there's no more questions in chat for now.
All right, well, thank you for viewing the CAD AI and the advanced imaging. And now I'm going to turn this over to Tony.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Tony Moreno. I'm the team lead on the applications team. And today I'll be going over NovaMG Pro. And in doing that, I want to discuss a few things. I want to discuss how it would look if you try to view mammo studies on just a diagnostic viewer. We'll talk about using a mammo viewer, regardless of whether it's NovaMG. Then we'll talk about the advantages of actually using NovaMG Pro. And then I'm going to talk about setting up NovaMG Pro and managing the navigation and the impact of the different settings. And then at the end, it will be just a coverall for tips and little things that don't quite fall nicely in the first things I just mentioned. So let me share my screen. Give me a moment. And tell me if you guys can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I was afraid the answer to that was going to be no. Okay. So this is a diagnostic viewer. This is, if you've been using NovaPax, this is where we go for everything. Like I said, you can view mammos on just the regular diagnostic viewer, and I'll show you how it looks if you haven't tried yourself. And I do want to point out that I have retrieved these studies for speed reasons on this class. So my setting is open the prior if it has one. So it's going to open at least one prior if it has one. Oh, it's blocked. Give me a second. There you go. So I'm going to open this study. And remember, I'm using the regular viewer right now. Okay, so it's loaded 2 studies because that's how the diagnostic viewer behaves. It only pulls the first prior. And you see I have the images here. And the radiologists can manipulate these images just like they do any other X-ray. They can window level, they can zoom, they can do the measure. And you see down here it has CAD. I can turn on and off the CAD. And right now I have that mapped to a keyboard key, but we'll talk about that later. So you can see these mammo images here. The issue now is the efficiency of going through this study. So right now, the doctor can either drag and drop, and as you can see, it's not pulling the same image on the other side. You're going to have to move the thumbnail. You're going to have to find it, then you're going to have to drop it. So it is possible, if you have the right type of monitor, you'll be able to, view these images. So you can either do the drag and drop. I've also configured on the keyboard next series and previous series. So I could hit the next and previous series on the keyboard. On the tomos, I could even do the next image, previous image. And it'll go through it. So it is certainly possible to view the images here, which of course is going to segue into why you would why you want to use a mammo viewer instead of just the regular diagnostic viewer. Because even though this might get you to see what you want, whether your radiologist wants to read this way is another question. So let me close this study. And so the biggest difference between using a dedicated mammo viewer and the diagnostic viewer is really the navigation of the images. So you saw I was drag and dropping. Usually in the mammo viewers, we do steps, and the doctor just steps through everything. And then, oh, I didn't even try to show you this. Let me show it to you. So I have one prior. So if a doctor wants to look at another prior, they have to double click on it. And then it opens up. And of course, I'm waiting for it. And it opens up in these tabs. So your doctor is even potentially going to have to, move back and forth between the tabs. I'm showing you this study over a 1-monitor system. It's likely your doctor has, 3 monitors. If that's the case, your doctor could actually select a different study and drag the thumbnails across. That is possible. But once again, there's a speed issue. If you're using a dedicated mammo viewer, that wouldn't be the workflow. So this workflow that I'm doing now is a very similar workflow as if you had been just looking at regular x-rays. Okay. So a mammo viewer, a dedicated mammo viewer will allow you to go through that study more efficiently. And the difference between using a third-party mammo viewer versus using our mammo viewer is that our mammo viewer is tightly integrated. Actually, it's just baked in. So what happens is your work list, it's all integrated to here. When the doctor opens this study, the doctor's not going to have to open up another viewer, look at it over there, and then come back over here to open the next study. The doctor's simply just going to go on this list, and he'll probably have a mammo list. They'll just go from their list and open the studies over here. And then what will happen is the advantage of using this within our system is that the mouse behaves the same regardless of the modality. So the window level is exactly the same. You know, if you're using a third-party viewer, the mouse might behave a little differently over there versus, you know, in teaching doctors how to use our mammo viewer, if they're already reading other modalities like CR and DX or CTs, the mouse is behaving the same way. The biggest difference is just the navigation is going to be different, but it's in a way that makes it easier for the doctors to read mammos here. So the next part is I want to actually set up using the mammo viewer. So, and this part is everybody would have to go to. So what happens when you're using our mammo viewer, you have to go to settings and you have to go manage study presenters. And over here is where you're telling NovaPax to use the mammo viewer instead of the regular NovaPax viewer. So what I have to do is I have to press add, and then I have to tell it, when you see a mammo study, use this presenter instead. So you press OK, and you press OK here. So I see Tori has asked a question, and that's a good question, Tori. That's fair enough, because I have worked with people trying to attempt to set up a hanging protocol. So I'm going to go back to the regular viewer again, because I still have it. No, I don't. I have it turned on. I have it turned off, so I have to remove this for now. Give me a moment. So if I open this study, it's going to use the regular viewer. And give it a second to load. So I can make it open a specific image first. So let's say your doctor wants to look at right CC and then left CC and then right MLO and then left MLO, just for example. And I'm not going to do all the images because it's really the same process for all of them. So I need to find the RCC. So I'm going to drop it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this button here, and I'm going to press create new layout from current. And what that should do is that should give me a second layout on the hanging protocol for the mammo study. So if I go here and I go to here, there's now two, where previously there was one. I'm going to add a third. So I'm going to drop the LCC down. And then I'm going to go up here, and then I'm going to hit create new layout from current. And it gives me this prompt. And if just to show you, when I go back over here to manage hanging protocols, you see there's a third one now. And this 1, 2, and 3 corresponds to the keys above the Q, W, E, R, T, Y. Not on the number pad, but above the QWERTY. And I said I was going to do 4, so I'll do the 4. I'll do the, actually that's a second. Yeah, so I have to do the right MLO, then the left MLO. So I'll drop the right. And I'll hit this again. Create new layout from current. It's going to add one more. Then I'm going to drop the LMLO. And when I do this, create new, it'll add one more to that list. And you'll see when I go back here, this list Wrong one, Tony. You'll see now there are multiples in there. I don't think it saved everything. Is it that one? Oh, it's that one. So if I close this studies, and then I reopen it, this is how that's going to behave. So it opens up this first way. Let me wait for the comparison. And this is just barely better than dragging and dropping, to be frank with you. It's just, I can tell it to, if I have it numbered 1 through 5, I don't need to search. If I hit number 2 on the keyboard, it does RCC. Now when I do 3 on the keyboard, it should do LCC. When I do 4 on the keyboard, it should do right MLO. And then when I hit number 5 on the keyboard, you'll see it's doing left MLO. Now the issue here is that it's only doing it on the study that I have in focus. And I have a second study here. So the 2, 3, 4 works over here also. See, LCC, right MLO, left MLO. And I could have done it on the Tomos. I just didn't see the point of showing all of them. So you could have done that. You could have done something even a little fancier. You could have done something like this, and you could have parked the RCC, the LCC, the left MLO, and the, where'd it go? See, that's why I don't like doing it this way, because I have a hard time finding things. Is it already there? Oh, it is already there. And then if I hit this drop down again and I do create new layout, this will now be the next number. So if I close it and I go back to here, you see I've even added a number 6 now. So when I open it again, so I don't have to go in order. I can go straight to number 6. So I've hit number 6 on my keyboard, it does this. And I could left click on here, hit number 6. We can do this. Then you can always double click on one of these to make it larger, and then double click to make it smaller. So you can attempt to make a hang protocol that makes it less painful for your radiologist to read off the diagnostic viewer. But I'm guessing that's really going to be dependent on volume. If your doctor's reading a high volume, reading this way is really cumbersome. So you'll see that in order to change these, even if I set up the hang protocols that way, I'm having to hit the numbers above the QWERTY, QWERTY, and I guess it's all the way across. And then I'm also having to do it on both sides. And then if the doctor doesn't like it, if the doctor wants to slightly different, the doctor's going to have to drop and drag. So the idea of a mammo viewer is it's doing this work for you. So you could set this up, this way, and your doctor could attempt. But the idea is that a mammo viewer will make this much more efficient, because instead of hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and trying to remember which ones they are, like let's say I want to go back to the RCC, I've got to remember it's number 2. And if I want to go to the left MLO, I've got to remember it's number 5. So it's doable, but I'd say it's not something somebody would prefer to do. So let me set up the mammo on the NovaMG Pro, and you'll see how much easier that is. But I have to go back to set it up to using the mammo presenter. So it's under settings. It's under manage study presenters. I have to tell it when you open a mammo, use the NovaMG presenter. And then press OK. So now if I open that same study, it's going to open it in the presenter. I have a hanging protocol set up, but just to show you how much easier it is, I'll go ahead and open this now, and we'll see how different it is. Oh, wait a minute. Let me take something off of that. Let's see. I don't want it to open prior MRs and ultrasounds yet. Oh, good, it's on 0. Okay, so now I'm going to open the same studies on this patient, except this time it's going to open up 3 automatically, 3 priors. So this is how it hung it automatically. This is our overview. And you can see it automatically opened up priors. So when you're using the regular viewer, it's only going to open up the last prior. It's not going to open up the other 2. You're going to have to open those manually. And now, ideally, instead of hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or dropping images to the screen, ideally what happens is your radiologist steps through and just keeps stepping through. And eventually what will happen is your doctor will get through every image of the study. Oh, I didn't want to see that. That's probably a bad thing. Let's see what's going to happen here. Oh no. What have I done to my viewer? So with what I'm doing, I've obviously taken my computer to its limits on what it's able to do. While we're doing that, why don't I show you something? Well, I probably have to restart it because I'm betting I'm using a VM, which is underpowered for what I want. Yeah, I'm crushing it on the memory. So I'm going to restart my viewer, but while I'm doing that, while it's restarting, I'm going to show you what the minimum specs are for what you should be using. Give me a second. I'm going to bring over the sheet of paper that has. So these are the current workstation specs. And if you're using an underpowered workstation like I am, you're going to get crashes like that. And so this is a piece of paper, and these are the specs for what we recommend at the bottom for a mammo workstation. The key things here you're going to be interested in is it does want 32 gigs of RAM, and it wants a dedicated video card to make things happen faster. I'm using a virtual machine, which is significantly weaker than this. And so if I had had this machine for this demo, I wouldn't be restarting my workstation. So give me a moment while I bring it back up. Oh, I'm going to need to move this. Give me a second. Yes, Alexis, we can share that with you. Alexis asked if we can send the specs for the workstation, and we can. So give me a moment. I'm going to log back in. I'm going to retrieve images before I start showing you some of the setup, because that'll help when I'm viewing the images. So Tony M, that's me. Let's log in. So I don't know if anybody's been a NovaRad customer for a long time. It used to show this first and then the other thing last. Okay, oh, look at that. They're still local. How about that? They hadn't been purged yet, although some had. Okay, so back where we were, I just wanted to show you that when the doctor needed to step forward through the study, all the doctor needed to do was hit next on the keyboard, and we'll talk about the configuration of that. Let me pull all these studies across, though, so that when I open them again, at least they'll be there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm retrieving images. And if I don't retrieve these, when I go to open the study, it might appear to crash, but it's not. What's happening is it's waiting for the images to show up. So we always recommend you retrieve images if you're reading off of a one-click. And you see these green dots? This means that the images for this study are local. What you might need to do is you might need to mitigate that by setting up some rules. I believe I have the admin console open, and I do, but hold on. It's hiding underneath my taskbar. So this is the admin console. So in the admin console, so this is to make images push to a destination. The radiologist workstation should be built here. Anything that's built here, images can be routed to. So at the moment, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options to send to. That means if I go to, oh wow, I gotta do this every time. So when I go back to the study browser, if you see me choose route, you'll see that that should be how many options I have. So if I go to study and route, you'll see I have that many choices. So the first thing when you're building a route rules, you have to have a place to send them, and that's the destination. Oh, I could have done this, huh? The next thing you might need is you might need a route rule. So it used to be called route rules. Now it's called the rule editor. And what happens is you would press add, and you would just build a rule to send mammos just to that one station. And I'll build one just because. So we're going to call this MG workstation, and the action is route, and the destination, I'm going to pretend this machine is the mammo reading station for Dr. Smith. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some conditions. The condition of it has to be a mammo. And then maybe I'll add a second condition of only push it to that workstation when it's verified. So I'm not sure how great of an idea that is. I just want to show you that you can be granular in how you decide to send studies. So right now with this rule, this means all the time, anytime a mammo study shows up, as soon as it's marked verified, it's going to be pushed to this workstation. Now in this case, this only works because Dr. Smith has a managed workstation. And you'll know it's a managed workstation because it'll say NR Enterprise or NR NovaMG on front of it. And it'll be one that you've purchased from NovaRad. Or if it was a managed workstation, it's just the software is loaded on there. But we would still have the information. Now, if your doctor is using what's called the one-click, the web viewer, and you know it's the web viewer because you went to a web page and you pressed diagnostic viewer, and that's how I got to it. Give me a second. So when I logged into NovaPax, I got to it from here. And if you have to go to a web page, then you click on it here, you're using the one click. And if you're using this, you are not using a managed viewer. So with that in mind, I can still push to that machine, but there's a lot of limitations to it. But the idea is I can. So when I do a destination, I'd have to press add. And on this one, instead of adding the information for Dr. Smith's computer, we would add this queue down here. And this name is the Windows name of the machine. So let me just put my Windows machine, HQIMP, I think it's AIMERIN02. And then I'll put it here as QMG. So what's going to happen here is you can still have the route rule to push to me. So we could create an identical route rule for Dr. Smith and instead put it to my workstation. But since my workstation isn't a managed workstation, the way it routes to that machine is it does it based on whether or not this Windows machine is logged into NovaPax. And the only way it does that is because I've logged into NovaPax and I have a username and password. So while I'm logged in, you can route studies to me. So that's the key there. It's only going to route images while I'm logged in. Versus if you do a managed workstation, it doesn't matter if a user's logged in because NovaPax is talking to the computer instead of to the user who's attached to the machine. So you can attempt to mitigate the speed of images by routing through this queue routing. However, I want to point out that there's definitely some limitations. In my route, it's agnostic to when it was performed. It's only if it's mammo and it's been marked verified. So if I haven't been there for 3 weeks, that means there's 3 weeks of mammos that are waiting for me. When I log in, it's going to start pulling 3 weeks of studies. So if you're going to do a destination of a queue, you should probably only do those manually and not have a rule for it. Because what's going to happen is until I'm logged in, it's not going to start pulling images to me. So that's the queue routing versus the DICOM routing. Let me go back to where we were. Give me a second. Got that in the way. Oh, give me a second. That's really. Let me do it this way. Okay, so I'm back. So we're going on. The reason I went there is because I was talking about how these are big studies, and if you attempt to open one before you have it, there's a good possibility you might think your computer is frozen, and it's not frozen, it's waiting. And depending on the size of a study, like a Tomo, depending on your network speed, it could take 5 minutes to retrieve all the Tomos you're looking at for that one study. And, it's really better off if you can have those waiting for the doctor all green before they try to open it. So let's go back to configuring the NovaMG. So I can press edit here, which brings me here. Or I can press it here, and that brings me to the same place. Let me revisit this real quick, the setting up the study presenters. This is per user. So this means that you can set this up as a default preference for the radiologist. If you do that, that means when that doctor logs in for the first time, NovaMG will be set as their default presenter for mammos. If you have a doctor who's been there already and they haven't really done much customizing, if you do a reset preferences, they'll inherit the default preferences, which will also give it where they have this. However, if you're a site that was not using NovaMG previously for reading memos, and your doctors have done a lot of work on their hang protocols, and they don't want them to be squashed, you'll have to add this per user. And so just remember, if you've got 10 radiologists and you don't want to compromise the preferences they already have, you're going to have to, under their login, do this once per user. And when my team trains, we'll do this for you though, and then we'll also set up the HPs for your doctors. So with that in mind, let's head towards setting up the actual navigation. So it's manage NovaMG Pro navigation. And this is where all of the, all of the settings that makes it more efficient for your doctor. So each of these areas where there's a title bar is a different sequence. So right now the overview is the first sequence. Then it's the current, then it's a tomo. And if you see these are in red, that means they're active sequences. If you look down here, this also tells you what active sequences we have. So for example, if this site doesn't do tomos at all, I might turn it off. And you see there's tomo here, and you see tomos in red. If I left click on it, it takes the red box away, and it removes it from the sequences. Now, one of the settings, it's not really universal to me as far as what doctors want. Some doctors want documents at the beginning. Some doctors want documents at the end. Some doctors want to drag and drop the documents to the screen. So I have it at the bottom. So if I turn it on, it's at the end. So it's left to right. It's at the end. Let's say we have a doctor who wants these at the beginning. What you do is you hold your left mouse button down, you drag it to the top. So I have to drag it up like part way and then drop it. I'm going to scoot up a little more, drag a little more, and then drop it. And maybe I can finish it this time. Nope, I'm going to have to do 2 more times. Drop. And if I drop it, oh wow, I might have to do 3. Nope, I can get it. So now the memos are at the top. And you see over here non-memos first. So within each sequence, there's a whole bunch of boxes. And these boxes are in reference to the images that you're going to see. The items in red are the active ones. So that means when they go to the overview sequence, it'll look at this one first and then this one. So it's top to bottom on the sequences, and inside the sequences, it's left to right, then top to bottom. So in this case, I have the MLOs on the left and the CCs on the right. The gray is priors, so it's prior MLOs on the top on the left monitor and currents on the bottom. So if you have a doctor who prefers CCs first instead of MLOs first, I'd have to click on this one. That's CCs at the top, priors at the top, and then currents on the bottom. I'd have to drag this over to here or drag those to the right of it. And then I'm going to disable this one by turning it off. So now it's still only 2, but I'm in front of the extras. Extras, by the way, are anything that is not MLO or CC. Previously, we were having an issue where documents were showing up as extra views. In this version that I'm on, 8.10, that's been fixed. But if you were on an earlier version, you might still be seeing that. So right now, I only have 2 of the icons set for the overview sequence. I can turn on more. We can have more if we want. The only issue with adding more of these is that's how many times your doctor's going to have to hit next. So the idea is to set up a sequence for your radiologist with the least amount of steps where they can see all of the images they need to see. So if you're watching them read, you don't want them stepping through icons that they never use. If that's the case, you should just take it off. But if you find that they're dragging and dropping, that probably means we need to add an item to the sequence that they're on. So it's a fine line. You're trying to make it just enough so that they see everything, but enough that they don't have to do any additional work other than moving forward or backwards. And that's really what makes this so much more nice compared to using the diagnostic viewer, just the regular diagnostic viewer to look at them. So I have the overview. I have priors on top, CCs on the left. If we have a doctor who's like, no, I want the currents on top and the priors on the bottom, we have that. It's over here. What's this one? So instead, I'm going to drag this. And the key is I just want it in front of the extras. And I'm going to turn off this one. So now if you see here, I have current CCs on the left monitor. assuming your doctor is using 2 viewing monitors, and I have MLOs on the right monitor. So the idea is that, like whatever your doctor wants to see on the overview, this is how we choose it. I have seen doctors who don't want an overview. If that's the case, simply unselect it. I've had a doctor who only wanted the overview, so then you just turn everything else off. On the right side, there's this gear. If you press this gear, it talks about automatically step through extra series on current study and automatically step through this many priors. So that's the overview. And it's typical that the next thing we would do would be current. And in this case, since I put CCs first, I'd probably make an assumption that the doctor wanted CCs first on the currents. And so at the moment, I have these. This would be, if there's 2 viewing monitors, it would be 1 on each monitor. So it would be CCs first, and then MLOs. And what you need to remember here, though, is these are the 2Ds. And then there's the extras. Now, I had some doctors who prefer these instead. Usually I set it up with either with these two, and whichever direction they want it. And if when we go through going through the sequences, if I see the doctor dragging images across to get this instead, then I suggest we just turn this on if the doctor is going to do that. So after the currents, I have at the moment set the Tomos next. And I would usually keep it consistent. So in this case, I'd probably move the CCs here to the left. And up here is an option to pre-slab it. Most people keep this on 0 though. If you have a mammo modality which sends slabs, I think usually GE does. What would happen is you just have 2 sets of projections for Tomos, one with the slabs and one with the thins. So once again, we have a bunch of other choices. Like this one is just all lefts, right? And this one's all rights. And then this one is all of them, except it'll be half on each monitor. This one over here, if you notice one of them doesn't have 3D in it, that means this is going to show the current 2D and the current 3D next to each other. So it would be right MLO 2D view, then right MLO Tomos. Then we have inside out. So we really have a lot of options here. The only option we have for prior Tomos though, if you remember I said the ones in black are currents and the ones in gray are priors. That means down here, these are the only current prior Tomo options I have at the moment. This isn't to say we won't put in more in the future. This just means on this version, 8.10. Whatever I'm on, I only have 2. So this would be the prior Tomos on the out and the current Tomos on the inside. So this actually leads me to see something that I failed to mention to a radiologist I was working with. I work for a site. I went to a site where they have probably 10 years of priors on Tomos because they've had it for a long time. And if you don't limit how many you have here, that means it potentially is going to make the doctor go through all of the Tomos for all the priors. And that's a lot of clicking. What that doctor actually wanted was it as 1. So only 1 prior. So you can adjust how many priors you're looking at. The next sequence after the Tomos is the comparisons. And like before, I have a lot of options. This is just the typical one I've seen. So once again, I would probably do CCs first since I did it. And in this case, I have it set up for right. So right CC, right MLO, left CC, left MLO. Maybe your doctor wants to look at CCs first. So if I do that, now it's right CC, left CC, right MLO, left MLO. So it's just a matter of dragging and dropping these to where your doctor wants them in the sequences. And if you look over here, we still have some other options here. I see this seems to be a popular one to me for some rads. This would be current plus three of priors. You could do more than three, it's just would only show you three at a time. Then we have the zooms. I definitely have some doctors who prefer to do the zoom themselves. If they don't want to do, if they prefer to do the zooms themselves, you would just unselect it. And then lastly, we have the CAD, which once again, in this case, I put CCs first, so I'd probably do this. And then unselect the one with MLO. And at this point, we'd be at the end of the study. So let me prove this to you. And let's hope it doesn't do what it did last time. So it's a document series first, and there were no documents scanned in. So it's telling me no matching studies. So I configured the mouse, the right arrow key to do next step. So I'm gonna hit the right arrow key one time. And it should bring me to the overview. And in the overview, you'll see it says current at the top because I moved them to the top. And on the bottom, it says comparison. And then in the corners of each one's on a comparison, it has this 1/1 and then this 1/3. The 1/3 is in reference to how many priors you have. The 1/1 is how many images of this projection we have. So this means on 7/10/2020, the mammographer took one X-ray of the left breast CC on this one. So when I hit next again, it should move these to 2 of 3. Yep, so 2 of 3. Then I hit next again, it's 3 of 3. If you recall, when I was using the regular viewer, like how we would look at chest X-rays and anything else, you would have to move to the different study and then drag and drop those images to the screen. Because even my hanging protocol that I tried setting up for you is only for the studies that are in view at the moment. It's got nothing to do with the studies that are hidden behind the tab. So if I move forward, it should go to the currents. Yep, just full-size currents, both CCs. Then I hit forward again. Oh, maybe I didn't do it yet. There we go. One thing I want to point out, do you see it says CAD finding is available? I have it tied to the C key on my keyboard. So if I hit the letter C, it'll show me what there are. In both of these cases, there's 0 on both sides. But it's off by default, but you can toggle it on. I have it tied to C on the keyboard. If I tap the right mouse button, I can configure everything to go over here also. So if you prefer to use the mouse, we can put the Show CAD button here instead. So it's there. I put some buttons over here on the side for like navigation, next step, previous step. I failed to put CAD on there. And so let me just show you real quick. I could do it if I wanted to. So if I right mouse click and I choose customize, I created one called MG Toolbar. This is one I created myself. Oh, I do have it there. It's just hidden. Oh, it's behind an arrow somewhere. It's behind. It's hidden. You know, I'll just move it for you so you can see it. Give me a moment. So you can move these toolbars just by moving to the dots here and grabbing it and then dropping it somewhere else. And you see my Mammo toolbar. I just had a whole bunch of stuff on it. And for example, oh, look at that. I said I had CAD on there, but I don't. I need to add it anyway. So customize. I need to find the toolbar I'm customizing. It says show CAD does. Oh, you know, if I could read properly, I would see that I had the button there. So the point of what I've just been talking about is every function can be put on a key on the keyboard. It can be mapped to this menu here. And we can even put a third ring around here if you really wanted to map a bunch of buttons to it. It can be put on a toolbar. So it's just the user preference on how they want to access their functions. Technically, everything is here also. However, this is for everything, so it becomes unwieldy to try to use this to try to find all your functions. If I was missing a function, I would probably just right mouse click here to get the menu, then hit this triangle and do this search. And so, for example, reload, if I didn't have it as an option. If I do a search here, I have the reload button here. And then I can take this button and drop it over here or something like that. So all of your functions can be put, once again, on the right-click menu. They can be mapped to a key on the keyboard. If you recall, I've been saying I've been hitting C to do this CAD on and off. And I've been using the right arrow and left arrow to step between the sequences. However, if you've noticed on my thing, I have previous step here and next step. So I could have been using this also. And I believe previous and next is here also. It's just a preference of the user. And by the way, that kind of granularity is available for every modality, not just this one. So if you have a doctor who doesn't want to memorize keys on a keyboard, just make sure if they want to use buttons or the right-click menu. And we can customize this, for whatever their needs are. Okay, so I'm stepping through just to show you that these are the sequences I set up. And it's warning me right now that I haven't viewed all the images. So if I say no, it's going to go back to here and let me continue. But since I'm not signing a report, I don't really care that I haven't seen all the images. So it brings me to the next one. Then I hit next again. It's going to tell me I haven't seen everything. I don't care. So now it brings me to, oh, I left this active. This is the current in comparison, the current and prior tomos. So there you have them. Then I hit next again. It's probably going to do the MLOs next after it complains that I haven't seen everything. Yep. And then, oh, I must have only left one on. So now it's comparisons. And it's going to go through all three over here. Now, I do want to point out something. On this one, there appears to be a second X-ray. And it's not going through that. To see it, I have to click on here. Then it'll bring that one. So, yeah. So basically, this is going to go through all four projections. And it's going to go through all 3 years of all four projections. So that's the important part I'm telling you about, is only give the doctor what they need to sign the report. I've seen someplace put 10 priors, which means for every one of these, a doctor's got to hit forward 10 times to get through all of them. It also means that you're taxing your machine by loading that many studies. Then you're also taxing your bandwidth because you're routing that many studies for every one of those. And after I do all the comparisons, it'll bring me to the mag views. And if you can see, there's a legend down here and it has that yellow square in it. That's showing me where we're at. And so as I step forward, it's going to keep moving until I see the entire breast. And like I said, there are definitely some doctors who prefer just to mag it themselves in pan. However, this is nice because it does it for you. And so after I go through here, it'll go and bring me to the last series, which was the CAD series. And this is the only one where CADs are on by default. And after this, it'll be the end of the study. End of navigation. So there's a couple things I didn't show you because I wanted to show you how the sequences worked. I believe this patient also has a mammo. So the doctor, an MR. So the doctor could look at the MR. Now remember, your doctor probably has a monitor to the left or the right of this with the list of studies, right? So what would happen is your doctor would just find the MR, double click on it, and it would open up. Now the issue here is, do you see it's taken it's taken my workspace and added a second one. which means that I've lost effectively half of my monitor space by doing this. And this is by design. There's really, I mean, you've got to view it somewhere, right? So if you do it this way, the doctor can choose when they view the study. And then when they're done with it, they can hit the X and it'll go back to full size. The reason I wanted to show it this way is because one of the settings is to open the study right away. So if I go to NovaMG Pro Navigation and I go to settings, I can tell it to open one by default. So I have one turned on. So let me close the studies that I'm in and show you what happens when I have that setting turned on. And it's telling me I didn't see everything. Okay, so now I'm going to open the same study, except this time I have it set to automatically open one MRI if we have it. Oh, did I not save it? Maybe I didn't. Hold on. Oh, maybe it's thinking about it. Let me step through. Oh, it's thinking about it. Oh yeah, I think I've asked more from my machine than it wants to give, or that it can give. Let's see if it opens up the MR. Did I not turn it on? I thought I did. I don't know why it didn't open automatically. I wonder if the study description. I bet you we needed to edit that. See, it says stereo breast. I bet you that's what's caught. I bet I needed to change the string to look for MRI breast versus just breast. I bet you that's what's causing that. But the point of it is that what would have happened is when you open the study, it would have opened like this first. And this would force your doctor to look at the MR now. Otherwise, your doctor is going to be looking at these half size on the left side until you close this workspace out. So I have some doctors who prefer to look at this first. And if they prefer to look at this first, just make sure that's turned on. But if they want to open it up when it's their turn, turn it off. So that's stepping through an entire study right off the top. Like before, it behaves the same way. You double click, it can make one bigger, it can make one smaller. Try moving that out of the way. You can navigate by using this. You can just change directly to the other sequences if you wanted. I'd seen some doctors read this way. So remember, this list would be on a separate monitor. I've seen some doctors navigate this way, and you can pin this using this. It looks like a thumbtack. And I've seen doctors simply move between it by pressing the buttons over there. I prefer next because I feel like it makes them faster, but you know what? They're the doctors, they get to choose how they want to read. So that's setting up the hanging protocols. So usually what I would do is I'll set up a hanging protocol and I'll sit with the doctor and we'll try to watch the doctor read one or two. And at some point the doctor might say, hey, you set this up this way. I actually want it this way. So that's also what's nice about this is it's easy for me to come in here and just uncheck something and choose something else. Versus if we were doing it in the regular viewer, editing the hanging protocol over this way, I'm gonna have to go in these, double click on it, see what it's set at, and then change this to something else. So editing a hanging protocol this way is it's not as easy. It's certainly not as easy. Let me see what's on my list. Give me a moment. Oh, one thing I wanted to make sure we went over is the monitors. So at the moment, I only have one monitor, so you're going to have to imagine what I'm talking about. So if you have 4 monitors, and imagine there'd be 4 monitors labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. If only 2 of the monitors were going to be used for NovaMG, what would happen is you would change this to NovaMG. Then you would select the 2 monitors you wanted for NovaMG Pro. And so what that would happen is, so if you wanted it to be number 3 and 4, you would have the 4 monitors listed here, and you would just left click on it to make those red. And what would happen is the ones you marked in NovaMG Pro would be the only ones they open up those studies on. Now, with the NovaPaks, if you wanted to use all 4 monitors, you could still, but you're probably just going to select 1 and 2. So that way the doctors could use just the 2 monitors for viewing everything except mammo, and then you could use the NovaMG Pro, select the different monitors, and you can use just those high-res monitors for looking at the studies on the mammo monitors. And so that is under settings and configure monitors. Remember, there might be 2 or 4 here, and you would just tell it on a NovaMG Pro which monitor you want to use just for NovaMG Pro. If you don't set this, it's just going to use the monitors that are set for regular packs. Give me a moment. Let me look at my other list of things I wanted to go over. So we went over the route rules, and I discussed, a managed viewer versus non-managed. Some things I also want to go over is if you don't have CADs, I have a quick way of showing you whether or not you should have them or not. Well, not a quick way, just a quick way for you to see it. It's not my way, it's just the way. Over here, if you press series, you get a list of the files we have. And not every one of these files corresponds to a thumbnail, because the CAD is not an actual image. So the CAD comes across as a structured report. If you don't have this SR here, you don't have a CAD. Usually that would probably be just because it wasn't sent to us for some reason, or it might be that you've only sent screenshots. If you send screenshots, this modality will probably be SC instead of SR. So the difference is the SR is something I could toggle on and off. If it was a screen capture you sent us, it would be one of those extra views instead. We talked about, remember, if it's green, that means the images are on this machine. I recommend, especially if you have tomos, that you either teach your radiologist to retrieve it manually, and that's by selecting the images and right mouse clicking and choosing retrieve, or you set up some type of rule to push it to them. If you remember in the case of a doctor who's using the click once, I don't recommend you have an ongoing rule for that destination, because if they're not logged on for a long time, the moment they log on, everything that fit the criteria of setting a mammo to them will go into play, regardless if, let's say, they left for 4 months and you hadn't seen them in a long time. The moment they log on, that queue is going to fill up. I recommend if it's a doctor using the click once, you simply select the studies and route them manually to that doctor instead. Now, one of the things when you're routing that I want you to be aware of is, give me a moment. Let me pull up the admin console. There's a couple rules on how many priors you get. So if you go to comparison studies in the admin console, under NovaMG Pro, this 3 here, which I can increase to 5, for instance, when you route a study to NovaMG, to a machine that has NovaMG, it's gonna route 5 studies to that workstation. In the workflow, when I have it set up to only view 3, it's still only going to show 3, but it would have 5 available. So this number can be higher than what you have set. Oh, wow, I got to go back every time. Sorry about that. When you have that set over here under NovaMG Pro navigation and settings, this means for this user, it's only going to pull 3 because every user might have a different amount. You might have one doctor who only wants 1 prior. If you have a doctor who wants 5, then it can go up. Now the difference is this number can never be higher than the number that you set up in the admin console. Oh, gracious. Hold on. So I get back to the admin console. I have a huge monitor, but if I use that one for you guys, everything would be tiny. So I have to do it this way. So this is how many it's going to push, but this is independent of how many it's going to open. So this is that. And then remember before I said it was looking for the string value. It was just looking for the word breast, but in that study, I believe they're labeled MRI. I don't know, let's call it something like that. So this string value has to match the study it's opening. I think there was enough letters in front of the word breast that it didn't recognize it as a comparison when I opened my study. Some tips I might want to give you, well, that I am going to give you, is, let me pull it up. Oh, come on. The labels, especially when you're doing your MQSA, you'll see that right now on this specific study, this probably doesn't have the labels you think it needs. That's under settings, options, and labels. You have to change this to MG. And these are the things you have available that you would just simply drop and drag to the here. If you don't have one of these here, just reach out to us at NovaRad and we'll teach you how to build them. Basically, if your modality sends us the information, we can put it on the images. Now, you're routing images to the ACR. They're not actually using NovaPax as a viewer. So actually how you set this up isn't how they're going to see it, because within their own packs, they have their own labels set up. When they're looking at the image you send them, it's what DICOM tags your machine put on them. So you can certainly look at our mine to see whether you have it or not. But in the end, it's the modality's job to put the information in the study. I can only show you what they've given me. And even if it's not being displayed here, doesn't mean it's not on the modality. It just means we haven't put it on this screen to look at. I think that's all I really wanted to cover today. I guess I'll open it up to any questions to the people who are still watching. I guess am I talking to myself? Can you guys hear me still?
I can still hear you. It
Okay.
doesn't look like anybody has typed any more new questions in the chat. Also, I do want to let everybody know that there will be a recording of this available here in the next couple of weeks. So if you are interested in getting a recording of this, please send an email to usergroupquestions@novarad.net. That was in the chat earlier. And any questions you have that come up later on, send those as well to that email. Yeah, it looks like nobody has any questions. I think we are good. Are you all good, Tony?
Well, you know what? There's actually one more thing. If nobody's asking questions, I can show. I see it's on my list, but I failed to talk about it again. So if you're doing your MQSA, one thing I might want to give advice on is if you've identified a study that you're going to send to them, you could always write it down on a piece of paper, and that's fine. But I built a radiologist called MQSA, and that's one that I didn't give anybody the password to, so nobody can log in. So if you know there's a study you want to send and you want to earmark it for yourself later on, you might want to do something as simple as this. Just right mouse click and assign to user. And for example, like I said, I created a user called MQSA. So I'm going to assign this study to that user. And in the future, what you could do is if you query for just who it's assigned to. So if I go to doctor assigned to, I can do custom. And because I know the name of the doctor is MQSA, this study is assigned to that doctor, MQSA. So you could ask your radiologist like, oh, is this the fatty one or whatever? Just assign it to the MQSA user. And that way later on, you could just find them all here and then, do what you need to do at this point. And once you're done with it, you could just right mouse click and remove assignment. And that way it won't be assigned to anybody anymore. And that actually is the last bit that I wanted to talk about.
Awesome. Let me check the chat just in case. Awesome. Everybody loved those tips.
Okay. And if you
it
have
looks like
any
there's
questions,
no more questions.
Yeah. So Dina and
Sorry.
Jillian are on our team. Just reach out to us. We can help figure it out. If it's something where like it doesn't do it, Brita, she's actually in product management. We'll reach out to her and say, hey, you know what? There's this certain item in the hanging protocol that doesn't exist, but it would really help out their doctor. So this didn't always have this many choices. We've increased the amount of choices we have here based on user input. So if there's something that's missing from here that makes a big deal to you, let us know, and we'll let the development know, like, hey, you know what, this could be useful to somebody else. And now I'm done. Sorry.
No, all good. Awesome. Good information today. Thank you guys again for joining for today's class. Again, I posted that email in the chat for user group questions at novarad.net if anything else comes up. But other than that, thank you guys. Look out for an email for your certificates in the next week. Thank you.